First of all, I would like to welcome all of you to the Rahma Center. For those of you who are here for the first time, welcome to our center. And for our regulars and who attend all of our programs, welcome back. Alhamdulillah, we have an amazing program tonight. Our visiting scholar, Sheikh Abdul Wahab Waheed, has graciously given his day to our masjid. And again, we would like to thank the Sheikh for his beautiful khutbah earlier today. Just a quick bio of the Sheikh. Mufti Abdul Wahab was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He completed his Hifz al-Quran at the tender age of 11 years old. Soon after, he started a 7-year Alamiya program in Vancouver, Canada, where he studied fiqh, tafsir, hadith in Arabic. Then he continued his studies in Pakistan, Jamia bin Nouri town, where he received multiple ijazat from scholars. Upon his return, he started the Darul Ifta program in Vancouver, Canada. And for those who do not know Darul Ifta, it's where scholars study and research for multiple years, and upon completion of that program, they're able to give a legal ruling known as a fatwa. Alhamdulillah. Sheikh Abdul Wahab currently teaches at Miftah Institute, where he co-founded with his brothers, and it is located in Warren, Michigan. Alhamdulillah, they do a lot of work in the community, and they travel throughout the US, delivering khutbahs, seminars, and community programs. We are honored to have him here tonight, and without further ado, Sheikh Abdul Wahab, if you can kindly share some words of wisdom with us. Jazakallah khair.
Whoever wrote that bio needs to get fired from Miftah. It's too long of a bio, and I know you condensed it. I had to write it, don't worry, so it's my fault. But Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for introducing us. We're from Michigan, and alhamdulillah, it's always a blessing to come to different communities, especially communities that have good weather. But I think I jinxed that, right? Jinxed that for us, but did it good for you guys, because you guys haven't had rain for some time, so may Allah keep everyone's community safe and continuously bless the communities in every way possible, inshallah ta'ala. So I believe the topic that was given to us, inshallah, was on strengthening the community and building a community, and that fits pretty well into the system of your community that we just recently has started. Allah put Mubarakah here, and inshallah allow this community to be a hub of hidayah, guidance all across the country, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll have that first, and anyone has any questions afterwards, then of course you guys are more than welcome to ask. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen wal aqibatu lil muttaqeen wa salatu wa salamu ala ashraf al-anbiya wal mursaleen Sayyidina Muhammadin Nabi al-Alamin alladhi ismuhu maktuban fil Injili wa Tawrati amma ba'd. فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وألف بين قلوبهم لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بين قلوبهم ولكن الله ألف بينهم وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ألا إن الدنيا عرض حاضر يأكل منه البر والفاجر ألا وإن الآخرة أجل صادق يقضي فيها ملك عادل فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يرى ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يرى أو كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. My dear brothers, sisters, youngsters, and elders, in every structure of a classroom, in every setup of a university, in every type of a learning institution, you will have two types of students in a sense. You will have those students who are just honor roll students, who are flying with, passing with beautiful marks and are able to get the best of marks in every class of theirs and are able to stand apart and separate from everyone else. And then you always have those students who are just getting through, struggling to pass, struggling to get through, struggling to be able to move on to the next grade, regardless of how great the methodology, how great the instructor, how prestige the institution, regardless of where you go in this world, these two types of students will be present in every classroom. They will be present in every university. This is the structure of what institutions look like. The only institution in which every single individual that sat in that class, that was present for a lecture, that was a part of that community, in which every single person was an honor roll student. Every single person was an A+ student. This was the community in the institution of the Prophet ﷺ. The student body were the Sahabas, the companions of the Prophet, where each and every one of them were unique in their own ways. Normally, in America, the school districts are set up in such a way that students can only go to the districts in which they live in. So it's easier for the teachers, the school, to plan for a certain demographic of students. It's easier to understand where they're coming from, their background, their psychology, and then teach them. The moment you mix and match, it becomes harder for the instructor and the teacher. Imagine a community or a structure in which you had every type of student. You had students from every corner of the world. We had students coming from Arab, Ajam, Habasha, Yemen, different types of people from different backgrounds. Not all of them having the most cleanest backgrounds. Some of them struggling before they became Muslims. Others for years searching for the truth, like Salman al-Farisi, after an entire journey of looking for the reality of what is the truth, finally finds it in Madinatul Munawwara. So this classroom is not a classroom in which everyone is the same, but rather it would be the complete opposite of that, where everyone was different. Everyone came with baggage. Everyone came with a history and a track record. However, the classroom environment was such that the moment you entered that classroom, you became unique in your own way. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked, Man akramun nas, who is the most honorable person? Who is the most noble of people? He responded by saying, Yusuf, al-Karim, Ibn al-Karim, Ibn al-Karim, Ibn al-Khalil. It is Yusuf alayhi salam, because he was a son of a prophet, and Yaqub, who was then the son of a prophet, and Ishaq, and who then was a son of Khalilullah and Ibrahim alayhi salam. They said, no, lasna ala hadha nas'aluk. We're not asking about who the most honorable individual is. We're asking about who the most honorable person is based on their qualities and characteristics, not their lineage. The Prophet then responded by saying, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. That the most honorable person is a person who has the most God consciousness. They then again responded by saying, Lasna ala dhalika nasa. We're not asking about that either, because that was already present for us in the Quran. We're asking about something different. And then the Prophet said, okay, you're asking about who the greatest people are? He then responds by saying, An-nasu ma'adin, كمعادن الذهب والفضة خيارهم في الجاهلية خيارهم في الإسلام إذا فقهوا. He says people are like mines of gold and silver. الناس معادن. People are mines. Rather in Arabic, like in English, we have similes and metaphors. Sometimes we use as and if and like. Other times we don't. The Prophet doesn't say people are like mines. He actually says people are mines. Like mines of gold and silver. What does that mean? That means that the Prophet ﷺ realized that every single individual had enough value to bring to their community, and then because of his understanding of this, was able to corral them. He was able to capitalize on their potential, and each and every person felt like their presence in the community was needed for the community to flourish. And no one felt as if there were just furniture pieces in the community of the Prophet ﷺ. And hence it was able to just grow. And this concept could be taken anywhere and it would be successful. They say the best systems are those systems that you're able to compress and expand at choice and at will. When you wish to expand it, it still works. You wish to compress it, it still works. And this was a system that the Prophet ﷺ institutionalized in regards to how to build communities. There was a lady in the community of the Prophet ﷺ in Madinatul Munawwara. She was known to be a sweeper of the masjid, the famous story. And it is interesting that in the tradition of hadith, everyone's name is somehow, it's secured, it's preserved. But this lady's name, for the most parts, is unknown. Because of not the fact that she was unknown in the community, but because of her sincerity, that she would only clean the masjid of the Prophet at nighttime, so no one could see her. She would only work to serve the masjid in those times that no one was present. Ali radiallahu anhu used to say that on the Day of Judgment, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hold us to account and hopefully gives us our reward for our good deeds, He would say that I have belief, I have complete yaqeen that all of my good deeds that I did in front of people, I believe that Allah has already given me my reward of that in this world. And I will have nothing for it to be given to me in the akhirah. Because people have already seen what I've done. And Allah then has already given me the share of that reward. He says the only deeds that I believe that I can hope for the reward of in the akhirah are those deeds that nobody saw me doing. And nobody knew about. Umar ibn Aziz rahimahullah's wife, she would say, her name was Fatima, she would say that my husband would sneak away at night to perform acts of goodness and to pray tahajjud. Right? If we were to make a list for ourselves, how many sins have we committed or do we habitually commit that nobody knows about? That list would be quite lengthy because we're human beings. And on the other side of the paper, if we were to write a list of good deeds that nobody knows about, that list may be fairly short. So she was known not for her act and what she did, but rather she was known for her sincerity in the community of the Prophet ﷺ. Nonetheless, one day the Prophet ﷺ looks around and he doesn't notice her. And this automatically tells you how present the Prophet was in his community. That though this lady was an unknown entity in her community, the Prophet ﷺ, being the leader of the community, had a presence of mind for everyone in the community. So when he looked around and he doesn't see her, he asks, where's this lady at? They say, Ya Rasulullah, she passed away a few days ago and we had janazah and we buried her. And he says, you already buried her and had janazah? And you never told me? They say, Ya Rasulullah, we didn't, because the sunnah of janazah is to perform it as soon as possible. We did not inform you. He said, where is her grave? Dullani ala qabriha. Tell me where her grave is so I can go there. And they take her to the grave of this woman, this lady that used to sweep the masjid of the Prophet. And he stands there, and Abu Musa al-Ash'ari says that we could hear the Prophet just crying quietly over the grave of this lady. And he then says, oh Allah, please forgive her and be pleased with her the way that she pleased us and the way that she served us. This was his presence of mind that he understood that annasu ma'adin, people are mines, like mines of gold and silver. No one was treated based upon where they came from, but rather were treated because of the fact that they now are present in this community. And now the fact that you're here is enough for us to realize who you are and what your value is. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah comments on this hadith and he says, why did the Prophet say annasu ma'adin? That people are mines, like mines of gold and silver. He says, number one, the unique trait of a mine is that you actually cannot benefit from it until you know that it's there. Or else it can be there for years. And if no one can identify there is something there, it will stay there and no one will be able to benefit from it. Like how for years in our countries there was oil and no one knew about it. So it was just sitting there. So number one, we have to identify that we have value. And every member of the community has value because that's what a mine is. We are not mines of gold and silver. We are mines of honesty, integrity, truthfulness, love, compassion, worship, service. But we are mines. And number two, after identifying that there is something valuable here, there's a second step, which is to extract it. And sometimes that process of extraction is fairly difficult. It takes time. But after all of that entire process that takes place, there is something valuable that comes from it. Similarly, the Prophet is saying that humans are like mines, but like any other mine, it takes time for us to extract the valuable assets from there. So similarly for human beings, it takes time for us to undergo a process, and that process is to serve the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, populate the masajid, serve our families to the best of our abilities, serve our communities, and then we do have value. And then the Prophet ends off by saying, خِيَارُهُمْ فِي الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ خِيَارُهُم فِي الْإِسْلَامِ, that the best of them in Jahiliyyah will also be the best of them in Islam. That Islam did not come to depreciate the value of anyone. Islam did not come to take away the personality and the skill set that Allah has given us. But rather Islam came to take these people who were very talented but had the wrong avenue and process to use their talent, and it just tailored them towards a process that could please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam does not depreciate our value. It adds value to us. And since he was able to identify this idea in his community was able to flourish. His community was able to grow. And there were challenges. There were times in Mecca where the Prophet ﷺ brought many different proposals from the community. Amongst them, one of them, as in the tafsir of Surah Al-Kahf, you will read, Imam Qurtubi rahimahullah and Ibn Abbas narrate the incident where the leaders of Mecca came to the Prophet ﷺ. And as they came to him, they said, look, we've been going back and forth for a long time, and it's not really benefiting anyone. So what if we come to a compromise? What's our compromise? We have one request. That you have these people that are in your gatherings that are not at our level. And this is what breaks the community. The moment we say that our layers of our community are based upon something else which was not found within the paradigm of the sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ. We have layers, but those layers are the same ones that the Prophet identified as taqwa, as God consciousness. And the unique aspect of taqwa is nobody knows who has it. So really, you just can't judge anyone. Nonetheless, these guys come to the Prophet and said, you have these people that are in your community that are very they're not at our level. They used to be slaves. Suhaib al-Rumi, Bilal, radiyallahu anhu, Khabbab, Khubayb. We would prefer that we just sit in the front. So we have what we would call allocated seating. This is the extent of their request. That we just want the front seats allocated to us. And everyone else that you have in your community that is poor, coming from a background which does not fit with us, we want them to sit in the back. We don't want them to sit in the front with us. Request number one. If this is not possible, request number two is that you just give us a different day that we can come visit you. Because we don't want to be seen in the same area as those people. Sounds like segregation in America in the 40s and the 50s, right? Same concept, same idea. And now the Prophet ﷺ is put to test because he does want Abu Jahl to become Muslim. He does want Umayyah to become Muslim. He does want Ikramah to become Muslim. He wants these people to become Muslim not because there's a benefit for him, but there's a benefit for deen. And he sits on it. And he doesn't respond to them because he's waiting for Allah's revelation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him, Ya Rasulullah, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. O Prophet of Allah, you remain patient and you remain steadfast with those people who are with you from the beginning. And those people, regardless of where they came from, the fact that they were with you and they remember Allah with you, you stay patient with them. And you don't turn your way from them. Then Allah says, وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ عَنْهُمْ تُرِيدُ زِينَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Don't even raise your eyes to look at what these people have to offer. Because of what they have to offer will come at the compromise of depreciating the value of the people in your community. And it will take away from their identity. And it will make them feel less because you're putting them in the back. So don't even look at what they have to offer. What type of different resources that they can bring to the table. The fact that you have to compromise your community members and make them feel any less is not worth it. Don't even look at them. Sometimes we say that, it's okay, it was worth it. But what is the definition of being worth it? Is it that we are able to say that we have more value in our community? Is it to say that we have more people coming to our masjid? What is that? Is that something which is subjective? Rather, it isn't. What's worth it is that a believer's heart is left preserved. What's worth it is that someone's heart is not broken. That's worth it. Well, Umar radiallahu anhu, as he was circling the Kaaba, he says, "Oh Kaaba, I know you're mighty and you're very unique, but I remember the Prophet saying when he was circling the Kaaba, مَا أَعْظَمُكِ وَمَا أَشْرَفُكِ وَمَا." He said, "Oh Kaaba, how beautiful are you and how majestic are you. But oh Kaaba, the heart of a believer is far more sacred in the eyes of Allah than even you." That's worth it. And that is the type of community that the Prophet set in Makkah al-Mukarramah. Therefore, when the people from the outside were able to see the miraculous effect, the charm that he had on these people, they desired for him to come to their community. Why would the people of Medina want the Prophet to come to their community? The Prophet coming to their community meant everyone will wage war upon them. The Prophet coming to their community meant that they had to defend the Prophet at every turn of their life. Where Usayd ibn Hudayr said to the Prophet ﷺ, "Nahri duna nahrik ya Rasulullah." It will be our lives, not your life, ya Rasulullah. Where Sa'ad ibn Mu'ad at the time of Badr, when the Prophet ﷺ was asking the companions whether or not they should engage outside the city or they should defend from inside the city. Should we go out or should we stay in? And all of these Sahabas that stood up one by one, Abu Bakr, Umar, Miqdad ibn Aswad radiyallahu anhum, they were all Sahabas that were Muhajirs. And they all stood up and said, "Ya Rasulullah, we should defend from the outside." The Prophet didn't make a decision. Finally, Sa'ad ibn Mu'ad stood up. And he said, "Ya Rasulullah, it looks as if you are waiting for us Ansari Sahabas to give you a response." Because the Ansar were the people of Medina. The Prophet says, "Yes, I'm waiting for you." He says, "Ya Rasulullah, you waiting for us?" He says, "Ya Rasulullah, waqta habala man shit, wa'fu amman shit, wa khudh min amwalina ma shit, wa ma akhadtana min amwalina, ahabbu ilayna mimma taraktana ilayna." O Prophet of Allah, you tell us to run, we will keep running. You tell us to stop, we will stop. You take from our wealth, we will be happy. Rather, what you take from our wealth is more beloved to us than what you leave behind. Take whatever you want. So why would these people desire for the Prophet to come to their community? It was something they saw in the effect the Prophet had in the people of Mecca, in the Sahabas of Mecca. And they asked him, "Please come to Medina." And then the Prophet's journey to Medina starts. And from this, we can see how a community was built from the ground up. The Prophet ﷺ enters Madinatul Munawwara as an outsider. He comes from Makkatul Mukarramah. But the hosts know their job. The Ansar realize that our responsibility is to make sure that the Prophet of Allah is comfortable and is at ease and he's not struggling with anything. To the extent that Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiyallahu anhu, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari was a Sahaba that gave his home to the Prophet. So the first floor he gave to the Prophet, and the top floor he took. He took the second floor. So one day he comes to the Prophet and says, "Ya Rasulullah, my family and I don't feel comfortable that you're on the bottom floor. Because when we walk, we feel as if you are living beneath us, so we're walking on top of you. So we find that to be very disrespectful. So we would rather you go on the top floor and we stay on the bottom floor." And the Prophet ﷺ said to them, "Your thoughts and the idea that you have is very commendable, but I would prefer to be on the bottom floor because people come to visit me. And if you were to be on the bottom floor, it would hassle you. So it's easier if I'm on the bottom floor." So every minute detail was kept in mind to make the Prophet feel comfortable, because they knew this man was able to structure their community. Not him as an individual, but the concept that he brought to light. The idea that everyone has value. The idea that everyone needs to be protected. The idea that everyone can bring something to the table. Hind ibn Abi Hala was one of the family members of Khadija radiyallahu anha. So after the Prophet ﷺ passed away many years later, Hassan radiallahu anhu, the grandson of the Prophet ﷺ, this is the famous narration that is found in the Shama'il of Tirmidhi, the Shama'il, the characteristics of the Prophet ﷺ. Hassan radiallahu anhu comes to his family member, his uncle, and he says to him, oh my uncle, do me a favor. Sif li Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Describe to me some of the greatest qualities of my uncle, or of my grandfather. Tell me, what was he like? Because he was only 6, 7 years old when the Prophet left this world. Tell me, what made him so special? What made him unique? And when you ask someone about any of us, like you only have 1 or 2 outstanding qualities. Like, oh, this person is like this. And so after like the first or second quality, like what else? Well, the end. There's not much more. I'm sorry it's not a Bollywood movie. It doesn't keep going on. Like it does end. Like, what do you mean there's nothing else that person has? Well, he is honest. He's a good guy. Okay. Anything else? Well, no more. Imagine asking about the greatest human being. So where do you start from? And you want to generally start from the best quality. Someone comes, asks about an individual for rishta, proposal. What do? If you don't like the person, you start from the worst quality. That guy, no, not him, man. He's like this. But if you like the person, you generally would start from the best quality. And you would just stop there. And if they ask more, then you give more. But you don't just continue. So asking about the Prophet is very difficult. And he starts off by saying, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فخما مفخما. That the Prophet ﷺ, this quality of فخما مفخما, which translates as the Prophet of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم was a man of great honor by his default state, and he was also a man who was able to give other people honor. He was a person of reverence, and the people around him were also now revered because of how the Prophet made them feel. That everyone felt that they were special, even though they may have been normal people. The Prophet took Bilal radiallahu anhu from being persecuted under a rock in Makkah al-Mukarramah, and a time came much later where he now is calling the adhan from the top of the Kaaba. The person is the same. His ethnicity is the same. His skill set is the same. His background is the same. But the fact that he was able to spend time with the Prophet was able to identify what this person can be used for in our community. And he gave him value. And now he became the mu'adhin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One day, Abu Dharr al-Ghafari radiyallahu anhu and him got into a small tussle. Got into an argument. Right? Like brothers do. And Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, before Islam, he had a wild past. Right? He was known to be, the tribe of Ghifar was known to be like the strongest gang. Like we're in the West Coast. So whatever gang you guys have in the West Coast, right? Versus the East Coast, right? Whatever, I'm not sure if that's still a thing anymore. But imagine the strongest, highway robbers. So they were known to be just wild. So in his argument, he threw a low blow. Sometimes you get in an argument and you throw a low blow. It's not cool, right? And his low blow was, you are a son of a black woman. And it was extremely low because it was something which the Prophet had worked years on to remove. And Bilal radiallahu anhu came to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Ya Rasulullah, this is what he said to me. The Prophet of Allah didn't say, oh, well, it's okay, grow thick skin. No. When it comes to our words, every amal in life, every action in life, what is the mother component of it? It's the most important, it's the nucleus of it. What is it? In every act that we perform, what is the most important aspect of it? Anyone? Sorry? Intention. It's niyyah, right? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ. Since we're kids, we've been taught niyyah. Intention. Purify your intention. And every worship, intention is the most integral aspect for that act to be accepted, except in dealings with people. When we're dealing with people, our intention actually takes a backseat. And it's not what we intended to say. It's not what we intended to say to the person that takes the front row seat, but rather what that person felt is what's actually happening. So a person can say, I never intended to hurt you. I never intended for this to happen. Your intention is secondary. The primary source of what you will receive as in reward or a sin is based upon how that person feels. If that person feels hurt, then regardless of what your intention is, that happened. And now that person is liable and responsible to seek for forgiveness. So it's not, a lot of times, especially us, this was not my intention. Well, I don't care about your intention, man. You hurt the person though. So you're responsible for that. Your intention now takes a back seat. So Abu Dharr al-Ghafari hurt Bilal, and he was actually hurt by it. So the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Dharr, ask him for forgiveness. Abu Dharr says, Ya Rasulullah, I was coming to ask him. And as he came, Abu Dharr al-Ghafari put his face on the dirt, on the ground. And these were people who had clean hearts, that even their mistakes were lessons for us. And this is our belief on Sahabas. Even their mistakes are a way for us to understand our deen. And this is what we understand about their mistakes. That he made a mistake, but look at his humility. A lot of times we say, we recognize our mistake. I know I'm wrong. Recognition is in itself not commendable. Recognition in itself is not commendable. Recognition is the start of a process. If a person recognizes their mistake but doesn't change, that doesn't mean anything. Because the Jews recognized the reality of the Prophet in Medina better than they recognized their own children. But they did not become Muslim. So recognition can either lead to change or it can lead to arrogance. It can lead to both depending on how we react to it. So a lot of times we say we recognize it. Recognition is a start. Now we humble ourselves. Like the brothers of Yusuf, when they came to Yusuf alayhi salam, they at the end of the entire story where they sought forgiveness, they did not say that, I'm sorry. No. They didn't even say that we were wrong. They humbled themselves. Said, brother, Tallahi laqad atharaka Allahu alayna. You are much better than us. And you are miles ahead of us. And وَإِنَّا كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. And we made a mistake. So a lot of times in arguments, not speaking from experience, but my friend told me, right? We're able to say, yeah, you're right. But very rarely are we able to say, you're right, I am wrong. That's very difficult to say. Like, you're right and I'm wrong. We can say, yeah, you're right too. You're also right. No. Yusuf's brother said, you are right, we are wrong. And hence they were forgiven for their atrocious act. Right? So Abu Dharr puts his face on the ground and says to Bilal, Wallahi Bilal, I will not leave from this spot until you put your foot on my face. This is not needed, but the idea was that I can't handle the guilt of what I said until you put your foot on my face, the lowest part of your body on the most honorable part of my body. Bilal says, I'm not doing it. He says, look, I already did halaf. I took an oath. You have to do it. So for the sake of fulfilling his oath, he just put it close enough and said, that's it. And then he forgave him. This is why أَقَلُّهَا تَكَلُّفٌ. They had very less formalities, they had clean hearts with each other, so it was easy to get through these difficulties. And when the heart has some form of crookedness, then small issues become large issues. So this concept of Bilal becoming who he was the Prophet's doing of letting these people recognize the value that they have in their community. When the Prophet ﷺ came to Madinatul Munawwara, the first hadith that he spoke of and he recited to his people in Medina. Wow, really already? Oh wow, man. Aisha's early here? Okay, Aisha's going to be late tonight, brothers and sisters. Just be ready. Is there food after too? Food's going to be delayed too. No, I'm just messing around. Right, inshallah, we'll be able to stop on time. You know what 3 minutes means for a sheikh, right? 30 minutes. Yeah? No. You guys are getting scared. You guys are walking out. They say, Ustaz Ubaidullah Evans, he's a great scholar. He says, never give a sheikh a microphone and never give a kid a telephone. Because once you give it to them, you can't ask for it back. It's done. It's too late, right? So this is what's happening here. But nonetheless, the first hadith, I'll end at this hadith because there's so much value in understanding a lot of us have heard this hadith, but to understand where it was said and when it was said. Because Quran, there's a concept of the background of revelation, sha'ni nuzul, that's also there for hadith, where there's context of when the Prophet said it. The Prophet enters into Medina, and the first hadith that he recites to his companions is Afshu salam, wa at'imu ta'am, wa sallu bil-layl wa nasu niyam, tadkhulu al-jannata bis-salam. He pretty much set the constitution of how to have a community that is thriving. Number one, he said, Afshu salam, spread peace. Afshu salam, contrary to the general understanding of it, is not simply to spread salam. It's to spread peace. Because spreading salam is one aspect of peace, but truly spreading love in the community and doing it with the sense of creativity. I always say to my students in Michigan, like, we are very creative on how we can irritate people. We need to be creative in how we can be kind to people. Be creative with it, right? It's not like I did my job, it didn't work out. Let's be creative. What else could I do? Well, the Prophet Jarir ibn Abdullah says, ما رأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إلا وهو متبسم. That I never saw the Prophet in my entire time in Medina except that he was smiling. Imam Suyuti rahimahullah comments on this and says that generally a person smiles because they are experiencing a sense of happiness. But he says, if you look at the Prophet's life, if you just uncover and tear apart all the barriers between us and him as a prophet, and you look at him as a human being, he was not a happy person. How can a person be happy if he lost 6 of his 7 children in his own life? How can a person be happy that he was born without a father and loses his mother at the age of 4 and then loses his grandfather and then loses his wife and then loses his uncle? He was a person who was content. So he comments on this hadith and says that he was not smiling simply because he was happy. He was smiling because he understood how much that smile meant to people and how much value people were able to experience from his smile and from his presence, that he was able to swallow whatever he was dealing with so people could feel like they were getting something from the Prophet ﷺ. So afshu salam, spread peace in the community at every level. Ala man arafta wa man lam ta'rif, upon people who you know and those that you don't know. And this was a community, the Prophet ﷺ, that everyone felt welcomed. And if anyone was hurt, the Prophet took that personal. A mother or a father, if their child is hurt, the child can apologize, the child can accept the apology, but the father and mother still take it personal, right? You know how it is in masjids. If a child is crying, you're running around, you tell the kid off, even if everyone gets upset. No, my son, my beta, bro, just Ibni. I know it's your son, but he's still was not being good. And if someone does it to our kid, we're also the same way, right? And this is why we should be the opposite of both extremes. We should be wary of doing it to other people's kids and be comfortable and be okay if someone does it to our children, right? We live in a hypersensitive society, so we should not be hypersensitive, but we should be wary that others may be. So because of that, we're creative in the way that we speak to them. Nonetheless, the first part is afshu salam. The second part is at'imu ta'am, being people who are generally just generous with everything. Generous with time, generous with food, generous with whatever resources that Allah has given us. The hadith does not say, and this, it's very interesting, because the wording of hadith is not coincidental, it's very intentional, right? He doesn't say, feed food, like give food. He says, at'imu ta'am, which means to present the food and make sure someone eats it, right? One is to give you a card, go to Starbucks, buy coffee. The other is bring the coffee to the person. I'm not asking for coffee, don't worry, right? It's not a subtle jab, right? But I do love my coffee, and I haven't had coffee today, so take it as it is, right? So nonetheless, I'm just messing around. Maybe I'm not, but at'imu ta'am means you go through every process of presenting it. So the person feels comfortable in consuming it, meaning that you make whatever whatever resource that you're giving to someone, you let them know that it's there for them to benefit from. And then at the end he says, وَصَلُّوا بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٌ, that you pray at night when people are sleeping. In other words, the spirituality aspect kicks in. That if we just have good character and no spirituality, that good character can benefit us in dunya but not akhirah. Even our good character needs to be intentional. That it's also to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of times people will say that what's the point of becoming religious? Because religious people have the worst character. Does that happen? Right? At times it happens, right? This person looks like this, but he's the worst when it comes to talking to children and dealing with people. That's true. But I respond to that by saying this person doesn't have bad character because he's religious. It's despite the fact that he comes to the masjid that he's still like that. It's not like he grew his beard and then became what? A bad person. Despite the fact that he became quote unquote religious, he's like that. It's not due to it. And there's a separation between character and worship. Each of them, you guys don't even have real cars, and you have Teslas here, right? Everyone drives a Tesla, so I can't even use the examples of compartments in your car. But us normal people that come from Michigan, right? We have oil, we have fuel, we have windshield fluid, we have brake fluid, and you guys have a button, right? So if you put the wrong fluid, if you put the fluid in the wrong compartment, though the fluid is correct, the compartment is wrong, so it'll mess up the car. In order for the car to run in its most efficient manner, every compartment needs to be filled at the right part. Oil, brake fluid, windshield fluid, and then the car runs. Character and worship have separate compartments. Both of them need to be filled to the right level in order for us to earn Jannah. One cannot compensate for the other. However, one can definitely help motivate us towards the other. And this is where good character helps. So to wrap it all up, the Prophet ﷺ, when he entered Madinatul Munawwara, he set this city on the foundation of A, spreading peace and love, and B, being able to serve one another based on their needs. No one had to ask. You could just tell that if someone is experiencing something, let me see how I can help them. And from this, there was also a sense of spirituality which kept Allah as the motive, which kept akhirah as the motive, and therefore there was no other incentive, and I'll end with this, there was no other incentive in their character other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of times, we are able to be kind to each other, able to work with one another for other incentives, for work, for business, for proposals, other things. We know how to be kind. We just choose when to use it. These people, since they had no other incentive except Allah, they were able to be kind without hoping anything in return. You know, like in our family, in our culture, you go to a wedding, you give something, and when that person comes to your wedding, if they don't give the same amount, oh my God, yalla kya ho gaya? You know, in families they have like these sheets where they write down how much a person gives, and you ask them, why are you writing it down for? No, just for accounting purposes. It's not accounting purposes. It's when you go to their, place, you have to give the what? Same amount. Why is it same for? Why can't it be more? So our giving is also for receiving. Our giving is not even for giving. Our giving is even for receiving, because we're hoping that it comes back. That's not non-incentivized. Non-incentivized is we don't care if the person gives us anything back. Since the beginning of time, human beings were made to be givers, not receivers. And therefore Allah gave us, the Prophet gave us the clear instruction that al-yadul ulya khayrun min yadis sufla, that the hand that is above is far greater than the hand that is below, meaning that we should be giving in time, energy, love. Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah, when he would give someone something, this is so beautiful, being creative on how we can make people feel good. When he would give someone something, he would put his hand lower, and the person would take from the top. And they would ask him, why do you give like this? Why don't you give the way that normal people give? And he said, because I don't want that person to think that I'm better than them. Because the Prophet said that the hand that is above is better than the hand that is below. So I would rather they feel comfortable taking whatever I give them. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow this community and all the communities in America to be founded on these same concepts of making everyone feel valuable, making everyone feel comfortable, making everyone feel welcome with a sense of spirituality, as the Prophet ﷺ did in Madinatul Munawwara, where everyone felt like they had a presence in that community, to the extent that when a person came and became a Muslim, they already felt like the Prophet loves them more than anyone else. Not because they spent more time with him, not because they learned more from him, but because how the Prophet responded to them. And our responsibility at every level for our own family, our children, number one, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. Number one, our own family and children, and by extension, the rest of the community as well. Our responsibility is to also make the community grow upon these same fundamentals, because a system, the blueprint has worked. They say, don't fix what's not broken. This blueprint worked in Madinatul Munawwara, and it worked wherever the Sahabas went. If this blueprint is placed within any system, it will also have similar effects and similar outcomes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow our community to become like this, and allow us to also internalize and externalize those qualities of the Prophet ﷺ, so that people can feel benefit, people can feel loved, people can feel valued, and therefore give back to the community in every way possible. Jazakallahu khair. Wa akhud da'wan alhamdulillah bil alamin. That was 3 minutes, right? Close. My math, I was always bad in math. I was one of those students in math that Allah would always just give me ilham by my next door partner. But I used to get, then later on it became a problem, right? Because later on, the math wasn't numbers anymore. It was like what? Letters, like X, O, Y, Z, right? I never did this. My friend did this. So after a little while, you can't just write the answer. The teacher starts asking about what? Show your work. I'm like, what do you mean show my work? I got the right answer. That's all that matters. And show your work, I would get caught. Nonetheless, G. Okay. Okay. Anyone have any questions? No questions? So anyone? No? They say that if no one has any questions, it means one of two things. Everyone understood everything, or nobody understood anything. I hope it's the former and not the latter. Anything at all, inshallah? Anything? It's hopefully a fairly straightforward concept. Nothing at all? Okay. Alhamdulillah. It's not a fundraiser, guys, by the way. Like you can raise your hand, and I won't ask for money this time. Next time, yeah. Go ahead. Can I recite? I'm not a reciter. I love to recite, but I am not a reciter. If my brother heard this, he wouldn't stop making fun of me, right? He's not here. He's coming tomorrow, right? Because he thinks that I don't know how to recite. So I'm going to make sure I tell him about this. Not just messing around. Now, I would love to recite, but unfortunately, because of time, and I have to clear my throat, it takes me time, get in the mood. But inshallah, next time, inshallah, we'll definitely recite. But my favorite surah, generally, I think like everyone should have a favorite surah, favorite dua, and a favorite hadith. And that can change based upon what you're going through, right? But once you have a favorite, it means that you have a relationship with it, right? So like my favorite surah perhaps would be Surah Al-Duha at this time. But maybe it would change. But Surah Al-Duha is a very beautiful surah because it was given to the Prophet ﷺ at a time where he was struggling. And many of us that struggle with different challenges, losses, hardships, Surah Al-Duha becomes a form of relief. So but you should have a favorite surah. If someone says their favorite surah is Surah Baqarah, that's beautiful too, right? It's a long surah. I'll say the story, and I don't think anyone has any questions. So there were 3 youngsters who were studying with the teacher. They came to the teacher and said, "Oh, teacher, the first one came and said, 'Oh, teacher, I wish to marry your daughter. I want to propose,' right?" And the teacher said, "Okay, well, that's perfectly fine. What's your name?" And he said, "My name is Ibrahim." I said, "Okay, well, you know what? Why don't you memorize Surah Ibrahim and come back? And if you get it, phir hum dekhenge." It wasn't like get a doctorate degree and come back. Surah Ibrahim, it's not too hard. So he goes. The next one comes and says, "Oh, Shaykh, no, I want to marry your daughter." So Shaykh said, "What's your name?" He said, "My name is Yunus." So, well, memorize Surah Yunus and come back. Then we'll figure it out. The third one comes, and he was chalak one. He was smart. He comes and says, "Shaykh, I want to marry your daughter." He said, "What's your name?" He said, "My name is Yusuf, but they call me Kauthar at home." Right? So I'll memorize Surah Kauthar right now and get the nikah papers ready. Right? So whichever surah is your favorite. Jazakallah khair, everyone. Inshallah, we'll see you after salat. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.